Unbelievable. You're playing at a time like this?
When the family's gone,
Our humans have gone AWOL!
Why are we standing here?
the bobbleheads are on.
Let's not let our prototypes give us a big head. Oops, too late.
Hiya!
Meet Ikioi,
Help me!
Kalani, Deuce, and Purbles.
I'm done residing with inferiors.
This thing's safe.
They're cool,
Absolutely not. Looky here.
they're courageous, they're collectible. Bobbleheads the Movie, now available on DVD and digital, rated PG.
Fuck this shit. Bobblehead toys must band together to defend their collector's home from greedy relatives who barge in to steal from his prized collection. That's the Google description of the movie. The IMDb page says, when the toys humans go AWOL, they must defend their home from unexpected guests. Two uninvited intruders who hope to swap a new baseball player bobblehead for a valuable one. The fact that they're able to cobble together some form of a coherent plot description, that's a miracle in and of itself. And it has 2.3 out of 10 on IMDb. That's lower than Things. This has a lower IMDb rating than Things. And it has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score, only by 2 points, with 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, start the month talking about Things, quite possibly the most boring movie ever made by humans. And then you jump forward to this shit here. Fuck, man, this hasn't been fun since Mac and Me. I swear to God. Ever since Mac and Me, it's all just gone downhill. Every once in a while, I always think that there are these animated movies that somehow end up going to theaters despite the fact they look like straight-to-video trash. And granted, the streaming wars that have been going on as of late with all the streaming services that pick up basically anything they can get the rights to, I feel like they've kind of mainstreamified low-budget trash like this. Because this was a 2020 movie. This didn't go to theaters, and if it did, it was extremely limited. It's not like the first Norm of the North or movies like that where it looks really terrible, but it somehow goes to theaters for a decent amount of time. This was 2020, and it was put out by Universal's home video division that mostly specializes in stuff that goes to like Netflix and Peacock. And a lot of their movies, if you keep up with them, they're not very good. They make like really crappy sequels to movies that people haven't thought about in years, like Kindergarten Cop 2, Cop and a Half 2, sequels to like Death Race, stuff like that. The Munsters movie that went to Netflix a couple years ago. I honestly think the best thing that branch of Universal has at the moment is probably some of the straight-to-video Chucky sequels, like Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky and stuff like that. That's probably some of the best stuff that branch of Universal has had in a very long time. Everything else, it's shit like this. Oh, this is more than just a bad Universal movie. They're the ones that distributed it. They're not the ones that made it. The company responsible for this is Threshold Entertainment, the same company responsible for the magnum opus of trash that is Foodfight.
Charlie Sheen is Dex.
When in doubt, just do the right thing.
With Hilary Duff.
Listen, tough guy, doesn't mean that I couldn't kick your butt.
Eva Longoria.
I've got a hot case for you.
Wayne Brady.
I'm your best friend, Daredevil Dan.
And Christopher Lloyd.
Now, nobody on this channel has done a video going down Foodfight because Foodfight is one of those movies that you've pretty much seen everybody review, from JonTron to Nostalgia Critic. So many people have already talked about Foodfight, and even though I've never done a video on Foodfight, I know that Foodfight is bad. I've seen it several times with several different groups of friends, and it's bad. It's really, really bad. Some of it is funny bad, but it's a horribly, horribly made movie with an admittedly interesting history behind it. Just to sum up this whole thing really quick, Foodfight was an idea that was originally concocted shortly after Toy Story came out, where the guy that came up with it was like, oh, well, we can do something like Toy Story, but instead of toys, we'll do it with food mascots, and it'll take place in a grocery store. And that's basically what the concept is, but worse. And, well, it was originally supposed to be put out in 2003, and then 2005, then 2007, but then the footage was stolen in an act of industrial espionage going by the director. And so they had to redo the whole movie from scratch. and they did it with really terrible motion capture technology. And considering the final movie where you just have characters flailing all around randomly when they don't have to be, it definitely shows. And from some of the accounts of people who worked on the movie saying that the director would give them notes like, oh, make this 40% better and stuff like that, this was clearly made by someone who didn't really have an animation background. Keep in mind, this wasn't just some Randy. This was a guy who worked in the industry for a very long time. He was a producer on several films that James Cameron made, and he's actually went on to produce several big budget things as well. But it's just so bizarre. How do you go from something like True Lies to Foodfight? You know what? After all that time, Foodfight eventually limped straight to video in 2012, and it went on to become one of the best-known, worst movies ever made. And, well, I guess Threshold Entertainment just continued making stuff, and this is one of them. Interestingly, this was also made with assistance from Microsoft, because there was a Microsoft logo at the beginning of the movie. Enough of backstory, enough about Foodfight. Let's talk about the Bobbleheads movie. First of all, in 2020, did they really think it was still a good idea to make a movie about bobbleheads? Aside from Toy Story, which, let's face it, movies like this exist because people are like, oh, Toy Story is, still a multi-million-dollar franchise, so we can clearly try to ape off the success of that. But there's a bunch of other movies that are trying to copy this kind of format. And it feels like it's not just going after Toy Story, but you also got elements of like the Lego Movie. Except the Lego Movie wasn't just a blatant ripoff of Toy Story. The Lego Movie, the first one, say what you want about the sequels and the spin-offs like Lego Ninjago and the Lego Batman movie. Say what you want about any of those, but the first Lego Movie was a genuinely good movie that had a unique style of writing because Phil Lord and Chris Miller are pretty good comedy writers, and most of the stuff they do is pretty funny. But this shit here, it's no Toy Story and it's no Lego Movie. It feels like after the Lego Movie did really well, not only did Warner Brothers try milking that into oblivion with all the movies that came out afterwards, which I've seen, I don't think they're that bad. I mean, at worst, they're just meh, but they're nowhere near this level of shit. Then you got movies like Playmobil, which are clearly trying to be the next Lego movie, because, hey, Playmobil's kind of like Lego. And they're apparently talking about doing a Funko Pop vinyl movie, because just like Funko Pops themselves, we're living in an era of nostalgia, and they're just going to have a bunch of Funko Pops based on popular characters, so that way people can just go, look at that, I know that character, I remember. You know what? As much as I'm not a fan of Funko Pop vinyls, I can at least see why they would make a movie based on them, because those are still popular things. Why was the first thing they thought of a movie about bobbleheads? And that's not to say that, oh, bobbleheads are completely, gone from history. People still make bobbleheads, but I don't know. But are bobbleheads still popular enough to where, oh yeah, that's something you want to make a movie out of? Even from the perspective of lazy studio executives who are like, oh, kids will see anything. Do kids care enough about bobbleheads to see a movie based on them? It might be a cynical way to look at it, but I think kids nowadays are more interested in Twitch streamers and YouTubers and especially TikTok people, so I don't know. Do they really think that even for like the youngest of kids, I mean, shit, kids practically get iPads at age 3. They've long past moved on from bobbleheads. Anyway, what is the plot of Bobbleheads the movie? Well, okay. We take place in this one house for the most part, and you have a family, and the mother and father are supposed to be like designers for this big roller coaster thing, and they have a deadline to meet. They're not able to meet it, so they decide, you know what, let's just take the family on a little vacation for the weekend. We're going to get out, we're going to try and clear our minds, and then when we come back, we're going to get this roller coaster design fixed ASAP.
Start packing! We're going on a mini vacay to Oasis Rancho!
Why you just take off for the weekend when you admit you have deadlines, I don't know, but okay. They have a daughter, and they take the daughter with them, and they establish that this family really likes bobbleheads. And, well, they like them so much they have 3 of them, soon to be 4 of them. That's the thing, if you're gonna make it that like, oh, this is a family that really likes bobbleheads, you think they would have it like, oh, they have an entire shelf dedicated to them, or like an entire wall of a room dedicated to bobbleheads, but they don't. It's just like mostly these four main character bobbleheads, because I feel like they didn't want to take extra time to make new characters or, you know, have to really dedicate time to multiple characters because that was just too much work for them. And, you know, the four main characters that we do have to deal with for the entire movie, they're not very likable. I mean, okay, you have this vaguely anime robot girl. I don't even remember her name, but I do know that she's voiced by the same actress of Katana in Suicide Squad. You know, say what you want about Suicide Squad, because I remember I liked it when I first saw it, and then after I saw it a couple times, I'm like, yeah, this has a lot of fucking flaws. But you know what? Say what you want, it still ain't Bobblehead movie.
Our duty under the Bobblehead Creed. Bobbles never bobble in defending their humans.
You have this persnickety black cat bobblehead that's really hoity-toity and, you know, has a persnickety voice. And then he turns out to be a very rare, very exclusive, very valuable bobblehead, but this becomes a plot point later.
Done residing with inferiors? I'll go for top price. Maybe have a place of honor in the Bobblehead Museum.
And then you got this one who's a skater girl, and this was shocking. Turns out that she's voiced by Brenda Song.
All good in the hood. It was the right thing to do. Bobbles bobble, but are always righteous.
I know, right? Isn't that weird? Fucking Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior, is a voice in a Bobbleheads movie. What the fuck? For like the first third of the movie, there's just a lot of dicking around with these characters. They're just kind of messing around and just kind of bantering back and forth. It's not very interesting at all. They're trying to figure out what the latest bobblehead that's arrived at the house is going to be. And then that's when the brother of the husband and father of the house shows up. And even though the guy is like a typical kind of yuppie suburbanite dude, for some reason his brother is a fat redneck akin to Larry the Cable Guy, voiced by Luke Wilson, weirdly enough.
Hello, hey, anybody home? Yo, Jimbo.
I mean, shit, I know Luke Wilson hasn't really, like, frontiered a movie since Old School, back in the late 2000s, but shit, man, what 7-Eleven or Pizza Hut job did they pull Luke Wilson out of for this? Either way, I wouldn't say it was worth it. Oh, and he also has a fat redneck wife, and she's played by Jennifer Coolidge.
I can bear a little heat stroke, but the aspic I made especially for your brother is simply gonna melt.
Anyway, the reason they show up to the house is because they found out that there's a very rare bobblehead that is in their possession, and they're going to not only watch the house, but they're going to try and steal the bobblehead and sell it for a lot of money. And by a lot, I mean thousands. You think that with a super rare, super valuable bobblehead that they could make a lot of money from, you think they would have tried to shoot for higher than just thousands. I mean, thousands is a lot of money, to be sure, but I settle for thousands when you can have millions.
Purbles McCat is a one-of-a-kind original made by a famous artist.
Anyway, we end up finding out that the fourth main bobblehead character is a baseball player named Deuce. What an awful name. But anyway, yeah, they open him up, and I recognized his voice almost instantly. I'm like, he sounds familiar. Who is that actor? Looked it up. This was so sad to learn. He is the same voice of Cyborg from Teen Titans. And I was like, shit.
Good evening, sports fans. What is this, a night game?
There are so many things that this movie does wrong compared to other movies. The two main movies I'm going to be comparing it to are Toy Story and Lego Movie, because those are the movies it's clearly trying to be like, but it absolutely fails at it. All throughout the movie, they keep referencing this Bobble High Council thing that is supposed to be this like grand council that make up the rules and laws for bobbleheads, and they're the ones that are supposed to be like maintaining bobblehead human relations or whatever. Compare that to Toy Story. Toy Story kept things perfectly nebulous and vague to where, okay, you get why the toys do what they do. The main rule that toys abide by is you don't come to life when humans are in the room. Makes perfect sense. This movie just muddles everything and just comes up with this stupid logic of, oh yeah, Bobble High Council and human bobblehead relations, and oh, there are these certain rules that explain why bobbleheads don't come to life when the humans are around. Another similarity to Toy Story is, in Toy Story 1, one of the biggest plot points was that Buzz thought he was a real space ranger, and Woody had to convince him that he was just a child's plaything. But in this movie, The bobbleheads keep referring to the humans as protos or prototypes.
The pleasure's all mine. Call me Deuce, just like my prototype, Deuce Gatlin, I'm sure you know.
I'm up.
As if they're trying to say that, like, bobbleheads are the next evolutionary step, and they don't really realize that they're just plastic toys that have one real cause, and that's just sit on a shelf and bobble their heads around. These bobbleheads, even more so than the toys in any of the Toy Story movies, they're terrible at keeping their shit a secret because these things are always coming to life when they could easily get caught. It's a miracle that they never do get caught. Later on in the film, they decide they're going to try and scare away Luke Wilson and Jennifer Coolidge by coming to life and setting up knockoff Home Alone style traps around the house. This movie establishes such stupid logic and all these stupid rules that these bobbleheads don't even seem to abide by, so why even bother setting any of that up? There's a lot of scenes of the bobbleheads just kind of dicking around and making lame banter and getting into shenanigans. Like there's a part where the cat bobblehead ends up going into the toilet, and then his head is huge. Like, I know bobbleheads have big heads, that's part of the thing, but like the shot where he like ends up in the toilet bowl, his head looks even bigger than it does in the rest of the movie. It's really disconcerting.
I'm safe. Oh, not safe, not safe.
Then his head ends up getting stuck in the hole, and then it starts to fill up with water again, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna drown. And it's like, wait, bobbleheads need air? Fucking things come pre-packaged, tightly sealed in plastic. Skater girl and the baseball player start to have feelings for one another. There's a part way later on where they're talking about going on a date, and there's this really stupid love montage. That's one of the things that's really frustrating about this movie, is that stuff happens, but it's mostly very boring. And not boring in the way that, like, Things was boring. Like, Things is a boring kind of movie where mostly nothing is happening. This is a movie where, yeah, stuff is happening, it's just really stupid stuff that's happening. And it feels like it just drags on, and it feels like nothing is really getting accomplished. No real goals are going on. Like, again, you go to the first Toy Story and the first Lego movie. Plenty of things were happening. There was a main plot. There was a main objective in that Buzz and Woody were trying to escape from Sid's house. And in the Lego movie, they were trying to escape Lord Business and trying to find the Craggle because that was the thing that he was searching after. And so they were going to all these extravagant lands in different areas of the Lego world. Stuff was happening in those movies, but it felt like it was progressing the story. There is like no fucking plot progression whatsoever in this movie. Also gotta point out, there are several times in the film where, because they're so bereft of ideas for jokes, not only do you resort to some of the lazy fart jokes or, you know, people getting bonked in the head or falling over, but they also resort to lazy puns. And the thing they always keep using in the movie is lame plays on the word bobble.
Not fair, you got a bobblehead star.
Seriously, if you tried making a drinking game out of all the times they say bobble in this movie, I'm fairly certain that you would be dead drunk by the end of it. Fuck that. No, you'd be dead drunk like halfway through. There's a bunch of stupid shenanigans going on where as the two rednecks are just like messing around with stuff in the house, you know, the skater girl ends up in a fish tank and ends up getting flung up into a ceiling fan, and the baseball player and the anime robot girl are in the backyard getting chased by the dog, and then they end up taming the dog. It's like the film equivalent of waggling keys in a baby's face. It's just like, yeah, stuff is happening, but it just feels like noise and colors flashing around just for the sake of having it there. Easily the stupidest part, and easily the most memorable part of this movie, is the obligatory celebrity cameo. And according to IMDb, which doesn't really have a whole lot of trivia listed on it, after I watched the movie, I tried to find some interesting key bits of trivia, and there was only 2 things listed on IMDb. One of those things was that apparently the reason this movie was made was because they wanted an excuse to work with Cher. So the big celebrity cameo of the movie is Cher, who plays a bobblehead version of herself.
Hey, Bubbles, how's it going?
And again, going back to my thing earlier, if we were to use that stupid mentality of, oh, well, if it's an animated movie for kids, so who gives a shit if it sucks? Are kids really gonna know who Cher is? Are they gonna be like, oh yeah, cameo from Cher? No. And the adults that are supposed to be watching this movie with them, 15 minutes in, they probably decided the movie was better as a video babysitter, so they could just slunk away and, I don't know, do chores or take a nap or snort bath salts or something. Anything but watching the movie with their kids, like they should probably be doing, because damn it, if the kids are gonna suffer watching this shit, then they should suffer too. Cher plays a bobblehead version of herself, and she's supposed to be a member of this bobblehead council thing, and she shows up in a drone, which is like a UFO, I guess, to bobbleheads. But then she shows up to deliver, I guess, the message of the movie and justify why a movie about bobbleheads should exist, because she shows up and says, the main purpose of bobbleheads is to bobble and bring joy to people.
The Bobble Creed is simple. Bubbles, bobble, and bring joy.
Again, it feels like that's the movie's only justification for why it's a movie specifically about bobbleheads. Could have been a movie about sentient power tools. And power tools at least have a purpose, because they're supposed to help you with household projects and fixing things around the house. Bobbleheads, while they are a nice accessory if you like bobbleheads, it's like, it just feels like a really lame excuse to be like, that's why the movie exists, because bobbleheads bobble and bring joy to people. Okay, thanks for that. Luke Wilson and Jennifer Coolidge find out that the baseball player bobblehead, who's the newest one in their collection, is actually not the most valuable. It's actually the cat bobblehead. So they're going to try and take him. But then Luke Wilson gets backstabbed by Jennifer Coolidge, and he gets knocked out and put in the trunk of her car, and she's like, I'm gonna make a bunch of money, I'm gonna use this as a mold and then sell a bunch of them on eBay and make a bunch of money. She doesn't say eBay, but it's basically implied.
I'm gonna use him as a mold and make 1,000 copies. Dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, da. That's right, I'll pass every one of them off as the real one, and it was my idea.
So at this point in the movie, the bobbleheads basically decide to go full ending of Toy Story 1 mode, where Woody comes to life and scares the shit out of Sid, and they come to life and attack Jennifer Coolidge.
Wait a minute, you ain't one of Jim's inventions? You're space aliens. I was right!
Anyways, the point is, this is the third act of the movie. The movie is almost over. They end up knocking down Jennifer Coolidge while making a Tower of Babel reference.
Guys, Tower of Babel!
Wait. They knock Jennifer Coolidge over. She's knocked out. And I guess Luke Wilson had her arrested. I'd love to imagine that he just completely skips over the part that, oh yeah, he was trying to steal his brother's possessions. That's the other thing, I forgot to mention this. At the beginning, they established that Luke Wilson and his brother, you know, the father, husband of the family that owns the house that went away for the vacation, they haven't seen each other in like 15 years.
Had a big falling out years ago. Earl took their father's entire bobblehead collection.
And now all of a sudden, he was like attempting to steal his brother's possessions to make a shit ton of money. But, oh, I guess because he had a change of heart, it's perfectly fine. And now they can start their relationship over again. Okay, thanks, anime redemption arc. Really, the only other thing you need to know is that the movie ends with they go to this bobblehead high council thing, and they're supposed to be bobblehead Cher's backup dancers.
Move it. We're gonna bobble to the left and bobble to the right.
The very first movie we ever reviewed on Blockbuster Show was Norm of the North, and Norm of the North was considered the worst animated movie of 2016. And you know what? Yeah, but by all accounts, it pretty much was. This feels like it's in the same park, yet I'm more pissed at this, because Norm of the North was bad. I mean, it looked bad from the trailer, and guess what? It lived up to the fucking bad trailer. It was still really bad. But this looked bad from the trailer, and it was even worse than it had any right to be. I mean, at worst, I was expecting it to just be kind of bland, but no, it's just so boring, with long stretches of nothing happening. I mean, stuff happens, but it's really stupid stuff. It's just lame slapstick and noise for the sake of having noise. And granted, it's not as bad as something like Felix the Cat, which really was super obnoxious, but believe me, this ain't far behind. This is fucking close. None of the characters have any character whatsoever, and it's funny because it feels like with Toy Story, they actually did go the extra mile and were like, oh, let's try and get some familiar toys in there. Let's get Mr. Potato Head. Let's get Slinky Dog. Let's get toys that are actually real toys so people can like kind of resonate and be like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. None of that in this movie. You have just 4 main bobbleheads, and they're all super generic. If you're gonna make a movie about bobbleheads that come to life, go all out. You know, try to actually reach for the stars and have, you know, not just 4 main bobbleheads, just 4 main bobbleheads, and then an obligatory cameo from Cher, of all people. But then again, one of the other pieces of trivia on IMDb is that, and I don't even know how true this is, but allegedly they came up with the idea for this movie back in the 80s. I really hope to God that's not true, but part of me feels like it might be, because back then in the 80s, oh, sentient bobbleheads. You know, back then in the 80s, oh, we can make movies and shows based on Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, Strawberry Shortcake, the fucking Rubik's Cube. So I guess maybe back in the 80s, Bobblehead the movie seemed like a perfectly viable concept. But you know what? And this is a way worse movie. Garbage Pail Kids having a movie makes way more sense than Bobbleheads having a movie. Because Garbage Pail Kids were a huge fad when they came out. And again, Garbage Pail Kids the movie is debatably worse than Bobbleheads the movie, but I can at least see why that was made into a movie. The fact that in the year 2020, when there was so much other horrible shit going on, someone decided, meh, fuck it. You know, people are stuck inside. They're gonna need something to watch. You know, we've been sitting on this for God knows how long. Fuck it. Bobbleheads the movie. Go ahead. And that's kind of the whole attitude the movie has all throughout. It's just like, yeah, what'd you expect? You know, it's just something to watch. Something to put in front of your kids for an hour and a half. Shut them up. But anyways, guys, that does it for Blockbuster Show in May. Look forward to 3 more reviews in June. 2 of them are going to be movie reviews, but the third one is going to be an anime review. I actually planned on doing it a long time ago, but I did see someone actually requested it, so it's good to see that people actually did suggest it. I'll say right away, it's going to be a review of Penny and Stocking, because apparently they actually are going to make a second season to that after all this time. But we'll talk more about that next month. Until then, guys, I'm Adam Sykes of The Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
We toys can see everything.
So play nice.